Welcome to Getting Sketchy Live, brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. And now, let's get sketchy.
Hello there, everyone. Matt here with thevirtualinstructor.com, and welcome to Gettin Sketchy Live, the greatest live broadcast in all of YouTube. I'd like to welcome you wherever you are and whatever time it is in the world to tonight's broadcast. It should be a lot of fun. And for those of you who don't know what Gettin Sketchy is all about, it's where either myself or my good friend and fellow artist and art teacher Ashley Hurst tries to create a drawing for you inside of 45 minutes, and we'll get that all set up in just a minute. And this season, it is all about creating artworks in the style of other artists. And these are famous artists throughout history. The first week I did Andy Warhol. Last week, Ashley did Vincent van Gogh. And this week, I'm going to be doing Georgia O'Keeffe. So I'm excited to do that. And if you'll remember, I was debating last week on whether or not I was going to use oil pastels or traditional soft pastels. And I've decided that I'm going to use soft pastels instead of oil pastels. I think it's going to work a little bit better with the way Georgia O'Keeffe kind of blended her oil paints. So we're not going to be working with oil paints, obviously, since we have a short period of time. But I am going to do my best to make my artwork look like it was created in the style of Georgia O'Keeffe's artwork. But I would be remiss if I don't say hello to Ashley, who's sitting right over there. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for asking. I hope you're doing well. And you folks out there from Western Carolina, Jersey Shore, Ireland, British Columbia, Massachusetts, Brazil, New York City, California, Algeria, and everybody joining us around the world. It's going to be 45 minutes of boxing between Matt the Muscle Fussle and Georgia the Precisionist O'Keeffe.
Wow. I did not expect that. That was well done. I'm glad that we have the hard limiter on the mic too. But before we go any further, I do want to say that I do see you, Nolan, in the chat box, and I want to say hello to you. Nolan is one of my friends, and is so glad to see you here with us tonight. I will remind you that I'm going to be working from a photo reference, and to find that photo reference, all you have to do is go to my YouTube channel. If you just look underneath the video, you'll see a little icon of my face. If you click on that, that will take you to the YouTube channel, and then you can click on the community tab, and there you will see the photo reference that I'm going to be working from tonight. I'll have it up on the screen, of course, during tonight's lesson, but if you want to have it for yourself, you can find it there. There is a chat box, of course, if you're watching this live on YouTube. This season, we are encouraging you to use the super chat function in order to get your comments and questions seen and heard. Not only will the super chat get your comment or question highlighted and shown in front of all the other comments and questions, but it will also do a lot to help this channel. So we really appreciate it if you decide to do that, of course. Of course, you can comment and post questions as well without using the super chat function as well. But again, if you want to have those comments and questions highlighted and definitely seen and addressed, super chat is the way to go. And yes, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell so you're notified when we upload new videos like this one or when we go live like this. And also, if you want to take your drawing and painting skills to another level, I would strongly encourage you to check out the membership program, which includes a variety of drawing and painting courses on a variety of subject matter and media, weekly live lessons. So after we do this here on Gettin Sketchy, we go and do live lessons for our members, and those are, of course, more drawn out, finished, polished pieces of artwork there instead of the short drawings that we do here on Gettin Sketchy. There's also weekly critiques as part of the Members Minute and a year-long curriculum for visual arts teachers. All of that is included in the membership program, as well as a free week-long trial. So if you want to check out the membership program, there's a link in the description below. If you want to just dabble a little bit and check out 3 of our course videos and ebooks for free, you can do so as well. There's a link in the description below for that as well. And also, I'm almost out of breath. Also, there's links to all the materials that I'm going to be using tonight underneath the video as well. I think that's it.
Yeah, I think
that's all the stuff I need to say.
You got it all in there. I think you said it all.
All right.
It's a lot.
I think we're ready to go.
Great value.
All right. Is there a particular reason why you picked this reference and not the whole flower? Yes, there is.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question.
Because we're talking about Georgia O'Keeffe, and I'll remind you that we are creating artworks this season in the style of famous artists. And Ashley and I have both chosen our 5 artists apiece. We're each doing 5 artists. And this is my second artist this season, and it's Georgia O'Keefe. And Georgia O'Keefe, of course, was an American modernist painter whose career spanned 7 decades. So she has a huge amount of work. She's called by many the mother of American modernism, and she gained international recognition for her meticulous paintings of natural forms, particularly flowers and desert landscapes. And that's what we're going to be focusing on, the flowers. She was heavily influenced by Precisionism. And for those of you who don't know, Precisionism was a movement in art where subjects were broken down into their most basic geometric forms. So we're looking at a painting right now by Georgia O'Keefe, and this is a painting of a flower zoomed in really close. And she liked to get really close in her paintings to her subjects, particularly the flowers, and they were blown up to a large scale and painted in a way that they came across almost as abstract paintings. So this is a really good example of what to expect with Georgia O'Keefe's art. Here's another piece. The flowers are a little bit more obvious in this painting, but you can see
there's still almost no negative space. It really fills the canvas.
Right. There is a little bit of negative space up here on the top, around the edges, but not a whole lot of it. But the painting is still simplified to a large degree. So if we were looking at a photograph of these flowers, there would be more details present, but it's simplified. And these paintings are large too, so they have quite a presence. Here's another piece. This is one of my favorites.
That's nice.
And you can see that this one is a little bit more detailed. This is a little bit more in the direction that I like to draw and paint, but it's still very stylized and does have a little bit of an abstract feel about it. And then here's another one of her paintings as well. And again, the flowers are still recognizable. There are several of her other paintings where it's a little bit harder to tell that it's a flower because it's distorted in such a way, or abstracted in such a way, I should say distorted, and simplified, just like we would see with Precisionism. So this is what we're going to be working with tonight. This is our artist tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the main camera, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Well, we don't need the timer starting just yet. Let's turn that off. That's making me a little nervous.
Nah, we don't need to look at that.
So hopefully it makes a little bit more sense as to why our photo reference is a flower zoomed in this close, because that is in alignment with what Georgia O'Keefe did a lot with her artworks. There is quite a bit of detail in this image, so I'm a little bit nervous with how much I'm going to remove and still be able to communicate the subject in a way that is still within Georgia O'Keefe's style.
And if it feels a little shape-oriented or abstract, that's okay. That's
right, exactly.
With her style.
It's definitely going to be shape-oriented. The abstraction that takes place here is simplification. With those of you who aren't really familiar with abstract art, there are three main types of art, categories that we can put art in. One obviously is representational art, and this is realistic drawings and paintings, or drawings and paintings that are somewhat simplified or somewhat less detailed, we'll say, but still are in the vein of realism. Realism or representational art is made to look like the subject. Then there is abstract art, and abstract art takes something from reality and changes it in some way. So you could draw or paint a subject and change the colors, and that would be a form of abstraction. That would be a simple form of abstraction. Another form of abstraction, obviously, as we're all familiar with Cubism. One of the principles behind Cubism is drawing or painting the subject from multiple angles. And of course, Picasso was influenced by African tribal masks. So that led to a lot of geometric shapes being used in Cubism. But still, it's taking something from reality and changing it in some way. Simplification is one of those ways that we can abstract things. And that's one of the ways that Georgia O'Keefe abstracted her subjects. Now, there's non-objective art, and a lot of times people confuse non-objective art with abstract art. Non-objective art starts with nothing from reality. You can think of this just with the term non-objective, no object. There's nothing that the artwork is created from. It's created purely for aesthetic or design principles. And a lot of times people will look at non-objective art and confuse it with abstract art. But abstract art always starts with something from reality and distorts it or changes it in some way, abstracts it in some way to create abstract art. So, yeah, it looks like Edie is saying some of what people call abstract art is actually non-objective art. That's correct. So Georgia O'Keeffe, although she's kind of somewhere in between being a representational artist and a abstract artist, but I would tend to say that she leans a little bit more towards abstraction. So we're going to allow our representational drawing that we're going to create here to lean a little bit more towards abstraction. So we're starting with the flower over here, but we're going to simplify the shapes to create that abstraction. Now I'm working on Pastel matte paper by Claire Fontaine.
Ooh.
This is become quickly one of my favorite papers in the world. It is somewhat like a very, very fine grit sandpaper. And I'm using, obviously, a dark gray surface here. My plan is to cover up the entire surface. So the color is not going to play a major role here. But yeah, this is pastel matte paper. It is a little bit pricey and expensive, but it's well worth it if you're using pastels. And I'm going to be using Rembrandt pastels. I'll be using the stick pastels, and then I'll also be using maybe some pastel pencils. These are Carbothello pastel pencils. I've already taken out a few pastels and isolated them over here. I really don't know what colors I'm going to be using. A lot of my pastels are just half sticks that don't have names on them. So I'll just be referring to the colors as in terms of color theory. So this would be a purple or a violet. This would be a light red-orange, for example. This would be a light yellow-green. So hopefully that makes sense. So
that's how I like to talk about colors anyway. That I understand.
Me too.
Some because of those crazy names can be, we can have a different idea in our own mind about what the color raspberry is.
Or brick red.
Yeah, right.
Or the sky is sometimes blue, but
exactly,
it's not always sky blue, right? All right, I think I'm ready to get started. Do we have anything pertinent to cover
I don't
before
believe
then?
so. Brent Desart mentioned he wrote a term paper on Georgia O'Keeffe, so that really takes the fun out of it. I'm just kidding, Brent.
I don't know if it would or not. I mean, Georgia O'Keeffe was an interesting person. So if you have a
super
chance,
chat, Matt.
All right, super chat.
Thank you, Brenda.
All right, thank you, Brenda. Thank you so much, Brenda. We really appreciate that. And of course, you can include a comment or question with your super chat. As I was saying, Georgia O'Keeffe was an interesting person. She had an interesting life, and it was definitely not a normal life. So if you want to learn more about her, I would definitely encourage you to look her up and learn more about her life, not just her life as an artist. She was a public high school art teacher for a period of time. So she's had a really interesting life. Anyway, and Brenda is seconding that with her super chat. She said, I did a super chat. I recommend O'Keeffe's biography. So,
for sure.
So it's interesting. All right, now let's create some interesting artwork here. So I'm going to go ahead and start the timer nervously.
All right, it has begun.
All right, I'm going to start with some basic shapes here, and I'm just going to think about the petals that are back there, and I'm going to try to get as much pastel on the surface as possible. So I'm going to be working very quickly here, and my colors might be a little bit exaggerated, which is completely fine. And I'm just looking at the edges of the picture plane and comparing them with where different flower petals leave the surface. And
Speaking of your picture plane, Matt, do you know about what size you're working?
Yeah, it's 5 by 7, so 5 inches by 7 inches.
A standard size.
Yeah, and that's proportional to the reference photo there.
All right, great.
All right, so this is now a yellow green. Again, just trying to get.
That's a great match for that color back there.
It's a little bit. I think it's got a little bit more blue in there, but we're going to transition to a light blue in just a minute. So we're going to let a light blue come in here, and this is one of the colors that I did not pick out. Let's see. Let that transition. And then I'm going to affect the values or change the values once I get some of these colors in place here
so you're
initially.
Kind of thinking of the aspects of color separate from one another. First the hue, and then you're going to focus on value after that.
Yeah. All right, let's bring a little bit of purple in here. That's too much purple. Let's get a light purple here. That's actually a little bit more of a red purple, but that's okay.
And if you don't have the exact pastel colors out there and you're following along, like Matt said, it's okay. And this is an interpretation, and color is one way to push that abstract boundary. I love this photograph and the way the stamens look. I mean, is that intense purple? Is that pollen? Purple pollen? Is that possible, or is it just I have no idea about botany.
Here we are speculating again, and we have no idea what we're talking about. Okay, a little bit of purple here, and you can see I'm just building up colors, getting them on the surface as quickly as possible, thinking about shapes. And a lot of OKeefe's works, she had these smooth gradations of tone and color. And I want to try to get that in our little sketch here.
Brenda, that was a 5x7. That's the size of the paper, yes. Inches.
Okay, we're going to go a little bit lighter up here. This is it looks like it's white, but it's really a light yellow. And this will help us get some of the lighter tones in here, right over the top of some of the colors we've already got down. So you can see that this is now affecting the value to a certain degree, more than a certain degree. It's making the values lighter. We're going to add this. And then we'll start working to make the values a little bit darker in areas. You can see I'm not even worried about the pastels and things right now. Just worried about the colors in the background. And that's one of the things that we can do with pastels, of course, is we can put colors down and then put colors right on top of them, as long as we don't fill up all the tooth of the paper.
Especially on a paper like Pastel Matte. It's got a lot of tooth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, last week I think we focused on Van Gogh, and very, very different from Van Gogh. Georgia O'Keeffe was very much celebrated during her lifetime as an artist. So she kind of runs counter to that stereotype that Van Gogh maybe played into a little bit, not intentionally on his part, of course. There's a great story about Georgia O'Keeffe being hired by Dole, the company that sells pineapples, to go to Hawaii, and I know Hawaii's been in the news, but for different reasons, to paint pineapples to be possibly used for an advertisement for their company. And she went to Hawaii and was so enamored with the flora there that she painted all kinds of pictures. None of them included a pineapple. And only after she returned to the mainland did she complete a pineapple painting for Dole. So I think it feels a little like she just had a nice vacation on Dole's dime and then painted a studio painting she could have done without the trip. So, but I love some of her Hawaii images, so you guys can check those out.
Okay, just using my finger to blend some of these colors together. Not worried about the edges too much, making them perfect at this point. They don't really need to be perfect anyway. All right, let's start pushing some of the darker tones, and then we'll go back to pushing some of the lighter tones. We'll add a few bits of detail, and then we'll start working on stamens or whatever those things are.
I know we've got a lot of floral parts floating around in the chat, and Matt and I are not experts on flowers. So you'll have to extend us some grace if we use some of the wrong terms.
Okay, so we can see that there's some kind of darker reds and pinks in here.
It's very cool red.
So I'm gonna put a little bit of that here and there. And I'm actually going to use one of these soft tools to blend with a little bit more precision here. And these tools are made for pan pastels, if you've ever used those before. But they also work pretty well for blending soft pastels too. And that's much smaller than the tip of my finger.
I can see how pastels are thought of sometimes as a painting medium, even though they're dry. You really cover that surface in just a few minutes, and now you've got all that material to start manipulating, almost like wet paint, even though pastels are quite the dry medium.
Yeah, I thought about it with the oil pastels. I really want to use oil pastels, but I do think since Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings were so blendy, it makes sense to use soft pastels.
I think so.
Especially within the time constraints. Really the best medium to do a Georgia O'Keeffe style painting would be oil paint, obviously.
I saw a painting that she did one time while she was still in New York before she had moved out west, and it was a really atmospheric. I don't know if it was a morning or an evening, but it looked kind of foggy maybe, and she had only used black and white paint, so it was all grayscale, but there was no real black in there, so the value range was kind of narrow and on the light side, which contributed to that sort of foggy atmospheric look. And it was beautiful, and it was a cityscape, which is pretty uncharacteristic of what we think of when we think of her work. So she was capable of capturing all type of subject matter, even if she pretty much settled on flowers and skulls as her dominant subject.
She did a few landscapes too.
Yeah, that's
deserty
right.
Landscapes.
With some, I think I can think of one with a lake and a reflection in that lake. It's pretty popular. Don't know the name of any of these paintings.
So I'm just finding colors that I see in the reference and just quickly putting them down. Not trying to think too much. Trying to think in abstract terms. Bring a little bit more purple over here.
And the pastels will allow you to add those inner parts of the flower right over the top of this. It might have been a little more difficult to do that with the oil pastels. They just started to kind of sink into one another.
Oh yeah, and more. To get this that blended transition, all these blended transitions. That's the best way I can describe them. It would have been very difficult with oil pastels. So that's why I'm not worrying about the whatever those things are. Pistils.
Do they
has our audience come to a consensus on what those are?
Yeah, I've seen a number of terms out there that's left me questioning my own.
Your own what?
My own terminology. So I'm going to look up parts of a flower diagram. See if I can help us out a little bit, Matt.
Okay. bringing in a little bit more blue than what might be obvious in the reference. And I'm doing this just to make the painting a little bit more interesting and more dynamic. And I think by exaggerating colors, especially when you're creating something that's abstract like this, is a good way to do that. I think we're already starting to look a little O'Keefe-ish.
Oh, yeah. Getting some good comments from the chat. By the way, Terry Robinson says, wow, I already love this one. It looks like this. The middle projection from the center of our flower is the pistil.
Okay.
And those pollen-covered parts are the anther. If I'm pronouncing that right, I won't know.
Don't reindeers have anthers?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought.
Anther. Anther.
Right. I know. Reindeers have anthers. I'm pretty sure deer have anthers too. Not just reindeer. Regular deer.
Yeah, the kind we see around here.
Sometimes during the holidays, I see cars with anthers.
I do too. And noses.
All right, so you can see that we're kind of manipulating the illusion of form here by adding values. And I haven't added any black or gray yet. It's just darker versions of colors. And that color just went off into the floor. And now it's back on the table.
Yeah,
I haven't even looked at the clock yet. Okay.
Oh, you've got lots of time.
I wouldn't say lots.
I mean,
of time. Don't tell me I have lots of time.
A lot of areas to do, but there's plenty of time on the clock, I guess.
Because when you say I have lots of time, that's when I stop and start talking about something.
You know, I've been saying pistol, and it's pistil with an I. Jan's helped us out with that.
Now, wait a minute.
Now I'm imagining like a shotgun barrel coming out of the middle of a flower or the barrel of an actual pistol.
You've been saying, how is what you're saying different?
Pistol. One has an O in it, and that is incorrect. It's
a pistil.
Pistil. Pistil.
And a pistol.
Right. And you don't want to smell a flower that has a pistol in it. It would be bad news.
Would it? Is that the gun?
Yeah, it smelled like gunpowder.
So one thing that's irritating about these...
Do you change those?
These tools. You can change them, but I don't have time for that, you know?
That's right.
I was going to change it, but now I'm just going to try to clean it with my fingers.
Just knock some of that extra color off when you change from one area to another.
Sometimes you want a little bit on there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you don't want a clean blend.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you'll notice that I am pulling the tool in the direction that any fibers, what would it be, veins on these flowers, the petals. I'm pulling the tool in the same direction, and ideally you want to make marks in the same direction.
Yeah, that's nice when you can actually see them in there. They're like a guide, a stroke guide right there in the reference.
Yeah.
All right, we got a joke from Mary Elizabeth, and it comes with a super chat.
All right.
You can call a panther, but he won't anther.
Yep.
All right, very nice.
It's a good one, and
Thank you for
we
that,
need to
Mary
cheer
Elizabeth.
there, Meredith. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Mary Elizabeth. You can call a panther, but he won't anther, and it rhymes.
Yeah. He won't anther, but he might sneeze, right?
All right, let's see.
Nice delicate marks in there.
Yeah, that's too yellow. Let's bring a little bit of this
That's that
light yellow,
whitish yellow, right?
This
You're
is that I'm
using
putting
right
over
now.
the top, yeah. I'm just trying to clean up some of these edges before we start on the pastels.
Yeah, we were working so vigorously, in the beginning, and now it's time to clean some of that up and slow down a little bit. Our Georgia O'Keeffe's art, though it does have a lot of gradation, it's also kind of characterized by being pretty hard edge in areas, isn't it?
Yeah, and part of that is because of those gradations of value that she gets. Wherever you would expect to see, when you were younger and you first discovered the power of shadow.
Yeah.
So everything had like a gradation of, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm assuming everyone has the same experience.
We all do go through a lot of the same stages or steps in our artistic development. That is true.
Well, you learn that by putting a little bit of shadow underneath things or around things, you make them look more three-dimensional. And then you start doing that to everything. You block letters, everything.
We're in the beginning of the school year, and my own students are working on an artwork, and I showed them where we keep the dark pencils, and then I pointed out that the stumps are right next to those, the blending stumps. Boy, have they gone blending stump crazy today.
Yeah, I bet so.
Gradation everywhere.
But Georgia O'Keeffe's art had a lot of those shadows in there, where it was like not necessarily naturally the way the shadows would exist, but almost like they were manufactured shadows.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what else do I need to hit here? Let's go a little deeper red here. I like that. All right, let's start working on some of these. Well, we can't yet. We got to put some of these little purple dots on there, don't
yes.
we? Not quite ready for that. All right.
Pretty distinct pattern in there.
Let's see. Is this more of a blue-purple? Yeah, this is more of a blue-purple. So let's get some of these spots back here.
Jenna, I see your question, and yes, I am. I'm enjoying the new school so far. Sometimes it's nice to make a change. It can be invigorating.
Part of me wants to leave the purple dots out.
Well, anytime you have a pattern like that, the very first ones seem lonely. They seem like they don't fit or belong. But I'll bet as you get more in there, they'll feel
That's true, but
more at home.
And I'm saying that mainly because of the sticking with the style of O'Keefe. I'm not sure if she would have included all these.
That's a good point.
Even though they're interesting, they're definitely not simplifying anything.
This is the fight I was talking about between Matt and O'Keefe, his tendencies and hers. That's something we have to deal with this season, things we want to do to artwork, and then what might the artist had done themselves.
I'm gonna leave them in here look, and there's no going back really. So we'll see, but this might be a decision I regret.
Well, we appreciate your honesty, Matt. You never know. These are the conversations we have with ourselves a lot of times when we're making art, making those decisions.
All right. Let's add a little bit of variety to these guys, these little dots, and add a little bit of a bit more blue. And here's a dark blue. And I've got my pastels that I'm working with the live series that we're doing right now, and I've got to keep those separated.
Got a super
there.
Chat and a tip here from a numbers girl. Hi, y'all.
All right.
It's looking great. I use makeup sponges for my pastels. They are less expensive. There you go.
Very good suggestion. And thank you so much, A Numbers Girl. We really appreciate it.
We do. So you guys have plenty of time, 23 minutes, if you need to go to the bathroom. Not to use the bathroom, but to get your makeup sponges. Then you can maybe simulate some of those types of marks that Matt was making with his pan pastel applicator.
Yeah, there's. I've heard that tip quite often there about using the makeup.
Are these like the little wedge ones, the triangular shaped ones? I'll bet. I'm just guessing.
Maybe so. Some of those came with the pan pastel.
How about that?
Or I have some of those. So now, as I gotta fight. I have to fight the urge to keep adding details here. I have to fight that.
Mm-hmm.
And add a few indications of some brighter blues here and there, just to make this a little bit more interesting. All right, I feel like something is missing here. Oh, it's those big old pistils. All right.
We've hit just at the halfway point, so did a great job with the petals so far.
All right, I think I'm going to start with the purple shapes first, and then bring in the little pieces that come from them. And I'm not going to get too worked up about making these perfectly exactly the same, obviously. We'll start with a little bit of an outline here, and then fill in the shape with just a starting point.
A base color. It's a really nice arrangement there with the dark purple shapes in the middle. They kind of, it's like a pinwheel or a fan, sort of.
And let's see, we've got that dark gray tip here. So I'll switch over to the dark gray. I'm gonna go ahead and put a shape in here for this.
The tip of the pistil. So you're just going to float these shapes out there and then discover what they're connected to as sort of a second step.
Yes.
That's good.
That's the plan. But this one's a little tricky because you see that it's connected over there.
That's right. Not a whole lot of overlapping in there, but there is in this area.
Let's bring it down a little bit further. That's approximately similar.
Flowers are so beautiful. You almost can't go wrong using them as a subject.
All right.
Do you know what type of flower this is, Matt?
It's some kind of lily.
Oh, okay.
I believe. And obviously, we're going to have to manipulate this purple.
Mm-hmm. Do you see those darker shapes as a black or just maybe a deep blue? The darker shapes inside of the purple shapes that
they're actually a dark purple.
Okay.
They kind of look like they're black on the screen, but they're a deep purple. Smoke on the water. And I hate I have to blow that.
There's typically less dust with the pastel matte paper, but you still get some when you're working flat.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of wood shops have these very large industrial vacuums that are connected right to where the blades on the different saws cut the wood, and it immediately sucks the sawdust away as you work. I wonder if they could make something that's not too loud for pastel artists to grab that extra dust as it's coming.
Or
off
you could
the
just
end of the
hire me to come over, and I'll just
blow it around.
I'll just blow the pastel dust away. This dust actually does bother me. Like, I will wake up with a headache tomorrow. Especially since we're doing this for Gettin Sketchy and the live lesson afterwards.
Oh, that's right. It's going to be a pastel night.
Still working with pastels. Okay, last shape over here. I'll exaggerate its curvature a little bit.
Yeah, different than the other precisionist artists. George OKeefe ended up settling on subject matter that was really a lot of organic shapes, even though she'd started out working with those folks in New York, and they were working from cityscapes, buildings, bridges, things like that, and a lot of hard edge and angular polygon-like shapes. So she kind of went her own way a little bit after that move to New Mexico.
Okay, this is a little bit lighter.
Contributing factor in her success.
I'm going to add a little bit of a lighter purple, and then maybe a little bit of a lighter pink over the top here. Let's see. It needs to be lighter than that. So there we go. That's not the right. It's not the right brightness though.
Not better value, but lower intensity, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like from the comments in the chat, there are little desktop vacuums, and I'm going to look that up.
All right, we're going to add this red instead, and then lighten it up. It's not exactly the same, but I just don't have a color that is that bright.
And the right value at the same time.
Right, and the right value. So I'm going with value and instead bringing in a little bit of that red that we've got featured in other places.
Well, I like to think value is the most important element of art. It holds the other ones together. So if you have to choose color or value to aim at, I think value is the right way to go.
We're going to use a dark gray here. Let's see if this will work. It's not quite dark enough. I'm just trying to get a handle on the colors that I'm going to be using here for the other flowers. Maybe we're going to use a pastel pencil, a black pastel pencil. Let's see. And that's going to have to work, I think. That's how we're going to have to work it.
And that's a purple pencil?
That is a black pencil, actually.
Oh, black. Okay.
All right, and then we'll use our light red again. Add some color. And then we'll go light purple over that.
I see it. We were talking about the dust. I see a tip in here about capturing the dust. Nicole mentions that if you're working at an angle, which we're not in this case, you can take wide painter's tape and tape it upside down on the underside of the edge, I guess the bottom edge, and it'll capture that dust as it falls. It'll stick to the tape so it doesn't get away.
Yeah, the reason I'm working on a
idea.
flat surface, of course, so you can see what I'm doing here a little bit easier. I always work on a flat surface over here. But ideally, of course, you'd be better suited to work on, an easel, or at least a little bit of an angle. Boy, I wish I could have that purple with the right intensity. Let's try this. No, that's still not it. It's just don't have that color. Oh well.
I think that's all right. I mean, you've got a lot of harmony happening with the color that you have in the pollen area.
Yeah, I
given
agree.
the colors that are behind it in the petals. So I think it's still. In fact, it may harmonize a little bit better.
It's definitely going to harmonize. That purple is just so nice, though. Harmony
is when we use the elements of art to create a sense of togetherness in our artwork, and in this case, color is contributing to harmony. It could be your, textures could do that. Even your use of space, but in this case, it's color.
And I've got to hurry. Not surprisingly.
Yeah, you spend a fair amount of time working out your color combos down there, but I bet it's going to go quicker now that you've sort of settled on a set of colors as you work your way around. It's looking good.
Well, my edges aren't going to be super refined on this.
Well, they're actually pretty irregular in the photograph of the anthers, which is a quality I kind of like. It stands out in contrast to some of the other parts of the flower.
It's also forcing me to. The time constraint is. Forcing me to simplify things a little bit, which is probably good for this style.
I wonder if there's artists out there who work with a time limit on their own artwork, not because they have to or it's for a show, but it's just sort of part of their process. And they're not, and I should say, and they're not illustrators, because illustrators are always working under a deadline.
I'm sure with all the people out there, I'm sure that there's somebody out there making 1 second paintings.
Do you remember those 1 second sculptures we saw years ago?
Yeah.
Published in a book. 1 second sculptures.
Well, they were, they were mostly water, weren't they?
They were
shadows
mostly like
and stuff.
Things thrown into the air and photographed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were really photographs of ready-mades. You might want to think about it like that. Jazz likens these flower parts to purple coffee beans. I can see that.
Yeah, I like those bits of red. I think I'm going to return a little bit of that to a few of these. Just a few more hints of that red coming through.
right, they are in place. They've got that kind
Now
of
we got
spinning quality to them.
They've got a
Like a
floating
windmill.
quality to them. That's
Definitely
for sure.
floating, but not for much longer.
They're definitely floating out there in space. All right, so let's get some of these guys down here. Let's see. We're going to start with, what color are we going to use here, guys?
I guess it's
Here.
it's kind of red violet and
Well, we've got
some
these
orangey
pink
red in
ones.
there. Yeah, pink on the outside. I'm looking at it's pretty different. There's a little bit of difference in color from the darker areas to the light. That's true.
Let's try this one. That sent a lot of dust in the air.
Does it feel like the tooth is filling up on you in any areas?
Not really.
Okay. Just a dusty pastel.
This is definitely an exceptionally dusty pastel here. That's the way I like them, though. I like pastels dusty. All right. This is an interesting little piece. It just kind of comes down and then disappears.
Yeah, but it seems to. I guess it's hidden behind the pistol. Did you have any friends named Dusty growing up?
Yeah, I knew somebody named Dusty.
That was not an uncommon name when I was growing up.
He had blonde hair.
Dusties.
Probably same guy you knew. You had Dusty over there on the south side.
Mm-hmm.
This one wraps around the back side here.
Starting to feel like a pretty wild, dreamy tree there in the middle. It's kind of what it looks like.
Yeah, it does. All right, let's try to add a little bit of three-dimensional quality to this. Here, so we're going to make a little bit of a lighter value, and then we'll add some darker values. And even though it's not...
A Scarf and Tea reminds us that there was a Dusty and the Three Amigos.
Okay.
I watched that movie with my kids in the last year or so. So all the way through, it looks like you've been following the procedure of finding a base color, a single color, and then working light and then dark into it for the petals, and then for the pollen areas, and now for those branches. I know that's not the right word, that holds on to the pollen.
Whatever those
areas.
things are.
I'm making stuff up.
Let's see.
I just wonder if some of these folks named Dusty had parents that were pastel artists.
I don't think so.
Probably not.
I don't know if I'd name my kid Dusty.
Did you put some green in there?
Yeah.
All right.
Because of the behavior of the pastel. It looks like they're a little greenish at the end, right before they become whatever those things are. All right, let's go a little bit. Let's bring back that red here. clean up the edge a little bit. And then let's get a little bit darker and separate some of these guys.
Yeah, that'll stretch out the value range, get a little darker in there. I like that for sure.
This whole
I had
thing
a
right here
student
needs
who
to be darker.
had a beautiful piece of art she's working on right now, just today, but she said she felt like things were getting a little muddled or lost, and it was a wonderful drawing, but we noticed that her value range was a little narrow, so we sat and made a small value scale together and pointed out the values at the dark end that were kind of missing, and in like 10 minutes her art really popped just from getting some of those dark values down.
All right, a little bit more of that red right here in the middle. To just differentiate some of these guys. And maybe we'll throw in a little bit of that on the other side there too. Well, might be a little bit too much. There's that purple.
But he says, I can't believe this is a sketch only. Sometimes.
Oh, it's definitely a sketch. Yeah.
Yeah, but it goes. Sometimes we draw kind of an object in the middle of the page. I kind of did that last week. But when you have a full composition like this, from edge to edge, it does start to feel more complete. Just because the entire surface of the paper has been more evenly worked.
Yeah, and it's definitely not as refined as an O'Keefe painting, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely feels like the style, that's for sure, though. Let's get a little bit of black up here, just to add a little bit of form to the tip of this thing. And then a light blue-gray up here.
These little pastel sketches are a great idea as a study anyway. If you were going to do a really large painting, to go ahead and execute, just to sort of wrap your mind around the type of colors and color combinations that you're going to be happy with before you do work on like a 4-foot tall canvas in oil paint. It could save a lot of frustration, and you would go into it with more confidence. So I think it's great to use oil pastel and pastel sometimes as sort of a preliminary study medium for what might later be a full-on O'Keefe size oil painting. Could be time well spent.
Let's just bring back a little bit of pop of color here, because a lot of this has been dulled down. Let's get a little bit of that yellow green back up here.
Well, we've hit the time's up suggestion, but we've still got some time. I can keep working.
Yeah, I'm pretty much. I can call this one finished. It's not as, the edges aren't as refined as I would like, but I do think it definitely has an O'Keefe flavor to it.
For sure, and you started with a O'Keefe flavor just with your choice of medium. So
yeah,
as long as you didn't get, as long as you kept it sort of shape oriented, you were going to stay in that realm. A Numbers Girl says it looks great. Strong purples are hard to find. Terry Ludwig has the best purple.
Who?
Terry Ludwig.
Okay. Whoopsie. You saw what that did, didn't you?
What happened? I missed it.
That's what happens when you use one of these lentils. And it's already got stuff on it.
Oh, yeah. A little deposit of color. There you go.
Some of the colors are a little bit dulled down because of all the blowing. But it is what it is.
With that pastel matte paper, it's got such a great tooth that it can even grab some of that dust as it flies across the canvas, or paper, flies across the paper. Get some nice comments, Matt. Beautiful, so good, pretty, really beautiful.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. All right, the last little thing I'm going to do here, I promise, is just add a little bit more shadow to the side of some of these little guys with just a little bit of gray. The pastel pencil.
Just add a little more definition.
Yeah, just a little bit. They just seem, each one of these pieces is just too, the color intensity is too strong. It needs to
there you go.
Muted a little bit.
Tuck up underneath other parts. They do get a little darker and duller. It's true. Rose says, I like the movement in this picture. I see, that the repetition up there does contribute to some movement. Good eyes. And the sort of sweeping strokes. They do a good job of carrying our eye around.
Up here too. Yeah. Yep. All right, I'm going to say I'm finished. I can keep going for sure. I will remove the tape, though, so we can have
good.
At least a little bit of a crisp edge around here.
Give us a little zoom out. There we are.
Yeah, I feel like I would have liked to make this image a little bit brighter, especially when I'm looking at it in comparison with the reference.
All right. Well, when you remove the tape and we get that darker gray around it, it actually does help the colors feel a bit brighter in a relative way.
Yeah, that helps a little bit.
All right.
But anyway, there is my attempt at creating in the style of Georgie O'Keefe inside of 45 minutes using pastels. So again, I probably could have made the edges a little bit crisper, the colors a little bit stronger, a little bit bolder. And with a little bit more time, I could have gotten some of the colors a little bit closer and maybe a little bit more of a range of value. I mean, I'm still seeing opportunities to add colors, and those would just keep coming if I just kept working. But
at the end of the season, we'll do a wrap-up show like we usually do, where we critique our artwork and go back and take a look at it after we've had some time away. So you want to make sure you tune in for that as well.
A little bit more gray underneath these. All right. Now I'm done. Almost.
And he's putting marks down again.
Almost. That petal just needs to be a little bit more defined.
In some ways, this is my favorite part of art making, or like the last 10% or 5% when you put fewer marks down and spend a lot of time looking at it and looking for the little things that you can still do. I enjoy that part of the process. It feels less frantic than the beginning.
All right. I think that's it. Gosh, this part right here is just driving me crazy. I just want that to be a little cleaner. It's a little cleaner. There we go.
All right. Got a lot of thank yous and thumbs up and great comments in there, Matt. So you guys are a wonderful audience. We appreciate your participation with us and with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you going to want to reveal your artist next week?
Yeah, I want to go ahead. I'll go ahead and tell everybody who mine is. Because my artist is a little less, for next week, is a little less well known than all the rest on our list. We're doing 10 artists this season, and my next artist is one that one of my professors shared with me and actually gave me a book that I've held on to. It's Piranesi. So that's Piranesi. I wrote it down. I had to look at it. You could tell. I wanted to make sure I spelled it right. In case you wanted to check out his artwork, since he is a little bit less well known, he was more of a printmaker. He did a lot of etchings, and I love etching, and I did a lot of those in college. I haven't done an etching in years, so I'm not going to do one next week either. I'm going to be working in pen and ink, but the mark making with a pen very, very much simulates the type of mark making that you get when you're etching, even more so than engraving. It can be kind of loose sometimes, and that's the way we're going to keep it. So I like Piranesi because to me he's inspirational, and I can't wait to tell you why. So you can check him out between now and next week, and get your Micron pens ready or your Molotov pens ready. I'll probably have both of those brands, and we'll just be working on white paper, and I can't wait. It's going to be great.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys for sticking around. If you enjoyed it, remember, if you're a member, we'll see you in just a few minutes where I'm going to continue working with pastels in a more controlled fashion at a much slower pace as we're continuing the landscape painting that we're creating. If you want to be a member, of course, just look for the link underneath this video and start your free trial today. And subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Thanks again for watching. And as always, I wish you all the very best in your artistic success. Good night, everybody.